If you look at the rest column in the note lengths chart, you'll see that the symbols for rests are pretty wacky. So at the top we have a kind of horizontal box dangling from a line, and then a horizontal box sitting on a line. You have to tell the difference between those two. Then we have this quarter note rest, which really doesn't look like any of the other rest and doesn't look like a quarter note, so that's pretty confusing. Things start to get a little bit logical when you get to 8th note rests and then 16th note rests. Basically, these four rests will look similar. They just get half as long as you add another kind of squiggle to the rest, a bit like the way you add a tail to those 8th note and 16th notes to make them shorter. So they're a little bit logical, but these rest symbols are pretty wacky. But the purpose of this video is to show you that even if you forget the symbols for specific rests, you can usually work out how long the rest is from the context. So let me demonstrate that using a few scores from my intermediate classical course, starting with La Donna è mobile by Verdi, Women Are Furniture. It's an Italian pun. We're going to use the second version of this rather than the first one. And in the second version, there are no rests on the first couple of lines. But when we get to line 3, bar 9, we have these two rests in the left hand. So how long are those rests? Let's pretend you forgot how long they are. Well, we know there are 3 quarter notes in a bar, 3, 4. There are 3 quarter notes in a bar. We'll go into time signatures more later on. And we can see that really obviously on bar 1. We have 1, 2, 3 quarter notes in a bar. So here, whoops, jump score. So here in bar 9, we have a quarter note followed by 2 of these symbols. And these correspond to quarter note chords in the right hand. So we'd assume that this is a quarter note rest. And indeed, if we double check that in the note length chart, we can see that that is the case. This weird squiggly symbol is a quarter note rest. There we go, quarter note in the third column there. So that corresponds to a quarter note in the right hand. So you could have guessed the length of that rest even if you forgot what that symbol meant. So these two symbols are basically telling you not to play anything in the left hand while you're playing these 2 right hand chords. So you should have let go of this left hand bass note by the time you play this right hand chord here. Moving on to the next bar, bar 10, well, we have a quarter note, and then we have this rest, a different kind of rest, clearly different to these two, and that corresponds to a half note chord in the right hand. So we would guess that this left hand thing, this rest here, is a half note rest. And indeed, if we check that in the chart, this one, the rectangular box sitting on a line, again, it's sitting on a line here, it's not dangling from a line, is indeed a half note rest. So once again, you could have got that from the context, simply seeing that it corresponds to a half note in the right hand. Or even just looking at the left hand, if you know there are 3 quarter notes in a bar, 1 quarter note here, so this has to be equal to 2 quarter notes or a half note. And then those rests are repeated in bars 11 and 12 as well. So let's move on to another piece. This is the Andante from Haydn's Surprise Symphony, again from my intermediate classical course. And here we have another quarter note rest, which is taking up the same amount of space as these 2 8th notes. So 2 8th notes add up to 1 quarter note. This we remembered from the previous score. Then we have an 8th note here, and then we have this rest left over. So it looks like this rest, let's get rid of some of these circles. Looks like this rest is corresponding to this note in the right hand, which is an 8th note. So we would guess it's an 8th note rest. Also, in the time signature, we have 2 quarter notes in a bar. So this should add up to 2 quarter notes. Well, that's 1 quarter note, and that's an 8th note, so half a quarter note. So we would guess that this is an 8th note to complete the bar. Various different ways we could work out that this seems to be an 8th note rest. And again, if we check on the chart, in the second column, we can see that this is an 8th note rest, equals this note. So once again, you can just compare the right hand to the left hand, see that this rest corresponds to this note in the right hand, and they're the same length. They're both 8 note rests. So once again, it's just telling you that you shouldn't be playing anything in the left hand here or here when you're playing these notes in the right hand. So when you're playing these 3 notes in the right hand, the left hand should not be touching anything on the keyboard. You should have let go of this note by the time you play this note. So that's what those rests are doing functionally. There's just one other example I'll show you, which is, whoops, okay, it's over here. Puccini's O mio Beppino caro, my dear father. doesn't have any rests or hardly any rest on the left hand. Okay, there's one here which corresponds to this eighth note in the right hand. That's an eighth note rest. And the rests in the left hand of this piece are really important. So you mostly have a continuous left hand with no break. So there isn't a single rest in this entire line here, as you can see. But when we get towards the end of the piece, there's an important rest here. You should let go of this chord in the left hand when you play this note in the right hand. And then when you get to the very last page, here we go. Nope. Oh my goodness. Who came up with this keyboard shortcuts for a preview? There we go. Last page of O Mio Babbino Caro. We have several rests on the left hand here. So we have one here, which means that you shouldn't play anything in the left hand when you're playing this right hand note here. And then we have another couple here, which means that you should let go of this note after an eighth note. So while you're holding this note, you're letting go of this one. That is the function of rest in a score. It's telling you to deliberately leave a space or not play anything for a certain period of time. And the type of rest you see, whether it's this symbol or this symbol or this symbol and so on, is telling you how long to leave a gap for in the score.